When Nazi Germany unleashed the Blitzkrieg, lightning war, upon Europe, the world was shocked not just by the firepower, but by the sheer speed. The panzer divisions surged forward, smashing through enemy lines and encircling vast armies. However, a tank is vulnerable when isolated. It requires infantry to protect its flanks, clear trenches, and occupy the conquered ground. But there was a critical logistical problem. Soldiers on foot, or in standard wheeled trucks, simply could not keep pace with the tanks across the mud, craters, and off-road terrain of the battlefield. The German solution was to create an entire class of hybrid vehicles designed to live in the mud and survive under fire. Half-truck, half-tank, the half-track. These machines became the definitive image of the Wehrmacht's mechanized infantry. In this episode of the Combat Catalog, we will catalog every infantry support vehicle, artillery tractor, and half-track transport that Germany used to move its war machine. From the iconic Hanomag to the bizarre Kettenkrad. This is the definitive list of German mechanization. We begin with the legend. If the Tiger was the icon of the Panzerwaffe, the Sd.Kfz, 251 was the icon of the infantry. Often referred to by the Allies, and historically somewhat incorrectly, as the Hanomag, this medium-armored half-track was the backbone of the Panzer Grenadier divisions. Before the 251, infantry had to dismount from trucks miles behind the front lines. With the 251, they could ride alongside the panzers directly into the heat of battle, protected from small arms fire and artillery shrapnel by its distinctive sloped armor. Over the course of the war, 4 main hull versions were produced, OSF. A through D, along with more than 20 specific variants equipped with everything from flamethrowers and anti-tank guns to the devastating Stuka Zu Fuss rocket launchers. With over 15,000 units built, it was the ubiquitous workhorse of the Wehrmacht, serving on every front from North Africa to Stalingrad. Sd.Kfz 250, the little brother. While the 251 was designed to transport an entire squad of 10 men, the Sd.Kfz 250 was engineered to be smaller, more agile, and stealthier. Based on the chassis of the Sd.Kfz 10 light tractor, the 250 served primarily with reconnaissance units and command sections. Its angled armor plates made it visually similar to the larger 251, but it carried only a half section of men. Its superior power-to-weight ratio and smaller profile made it excellent for scouts who needed to spot the enemy and retreat quickly before being engaged. One of its most famous variants was used personally by Field Marshal Erwin Rommel in North Africa. Named Griffin, it served as his mobile command post, allowing the Desert Fox to lead his troops from the very front. The Blitzkrieg relied heavily on moving heavy artillery at the same speed as the tanks. These vehicles were not merely tow trucks, they were essential crew transports known as prime movers, Zugkraftwagen. Sd.Kfz 10, light prime mover. The Sd.Kfz 10 was the smallest of Germany's standard artillery tractors. Designed by Demag, this vehicle was tasked with towing light ordnance, such as the 3.7 cm Pak 36 anti-tank gun or the Lig-18 light infantry howitzer. It also carried the gun's full crew and ammunition supply. Although light, its engineering was complex and expensive to manufacture. It was crucial during the early phases of the war, allowing light artillery to keep up with the frantic pace of the invasions of Poland and France. Later in the war, its reliable chassis served as the foundation for the armored Sd.Kfz 250. Sd.Kfz 11, medium prime mover. Moving up the weight class, we have the Sd.Kfz 11. This 3-ton vehicle was the workhorse for medium artillery, specifically designed to tow the ubiquitous 10.5 cm Lu FH-18 field howitzer and the deadly 7.5 cm Pak 40 anti-tank gun. Visually, it resembles an unarmored Sd.Kfz 251, sharing many mechanical components. It was vital for ensuring that when the infantry stopped to fight, their artillery support was already positioned to fire. It bridged the gap between the light tactical towing of the Sd.Kfz 10 and the heavy hauling of the larger tractors. Sd.Kfz 6 and Sd.Kfz 7, the heavy hitters. Here we enter the category of raw power. The Sd.Kfz 6, 5-ton, was designed to tow medium howitzers, but it was largely overshadowed and eventually replaced by the legendary Sd.Kfz 7, 8-ton. The Sd.Kfz 7 is famous for one primary reason. It was the designated prime mover for the feared 88mm flak gun. Without the Sd.Kfz 7, the 88, arguably the most effective anti-tank and anti-aircraft weapon of the war, would have been a static and vulnerable emplacement. This vehicle could transport the heavy gun, heavy ammunition crates, and a crew of up to 12 men across terrain where standard wheeled trucks would bog down instantly. It was the mobility behind the lethal reputation of the 88. Sd.Kfz 8 and Sd.Kfz 9, the Famo. At the very top of the food chain were the giants. The Sd.Kfz 8, 12-ton, and the monstrous Sd.Kfz 9 Famo, 18-ton. The Famo was the heaviest recovery vehicle in the German inventory. As German tanks grew larger, recovering them became a logistical nightmare. When a Tiger I or Panther tank broke down or became stuck in the mud, the Sd.Kfz 9 was the only vehicle capable of saving it. Often, it required 2 or even 3 Famos linked together to pull a single Tiger tank out of the deep Russian mud. These vehicles were precious assets. Losing a Famo often meant abandoning a Tiger. When the war turned against the Soviet Union, the infamous Russian mud, Rasputitsa, and deep snow defeated standard wheeled vehicles. Germany had to improvise, leading to some unique designs. Sd.Kfz 2, Kettenkrad. Perhaps the strangest and most fascinating vehicle of the war, the Sd.Kfz 2 Kettenkrad. It was a hybrid, the front end of a motorcycle welded to the rear end of a light tank. Originally designed for paratroopers, it was small enough to fit inside a Junkers Ju-52 transport plane. It became an invaluable utility vehicle in the thick mud of the Eastern Front. With excellent traction and the ability to tow light loads or lay communication cables through dense forests, the Kettenkrad is today one of the most collectible and recognizable military vehicles in the world. Sd.Kfz 3, Maultier. The Mule. When the Wehrmacht realized their thousands of commercial trucks, Opel Blitz, Mercedes, were useless in the Russian autumn rains, they created the Maultier. It was an ingenious field conversion. Engineers took a standard truck, removed the rear axle, and installed a tracked suspension system, often using surplus parts from obsolete Panzer I or II tanks. It was cheap, somewhat ugly, but highly effective. The Maultier kept German supply lines running when nothing else on wheels could move. Raupenschlepper Ost, RSO. The Caterpillar Tractor East. Inspired by captured Soviet tractors that seemed to float over the mud, the RSO was Germany's final admission that complex engineering isn't always superior. It was brutally simple, a boxy steel cab sitting on a fully tracked chassis with no steering wheels at the front. It was slow, loud, and uncomfortable, but it was unstoppable in deep snow and thick sludge. It became the primary mule for anti-tank guns in the desperate final years of the war, proving that sometimes, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication in warfare. The image of the Wehrmacht is often dominated by the great Panzer tanks, but it was this fleet of half-tracks, prime movers, and hybrid vehicles that actually allowed the war to move. They carried the infantry into battle, hauled the guns that destroyed Allied armor, and recovered the fallen giants from the mud. Without the Sd.Kfz 251 or the humble Sd.Kfz 7, the Blitzkrieg would have ground to a halt in the first kilometer of mud. Which of these vehicles do you think was the most versatile on the battlefield? The agile Kettenkrad or the robust Hanomag? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget, in the next episode of the Combat Catalog, we will analyze every submachine gun used in World War II, from the Thompson to the MP40. Subscribe now so you don't miss it.